Hey everyone, I'm Monica Clavijo, and welcome back to the Bear Experiment podcast, where we uncover the raw, authentic stories of extraordinary individuals who inspire us to embrace our truth and face our challenges, and always rise above. Today, we're diving into a conversation with someone whose journey will captivate and empower you. Meet Eric, also known as Aily, a talented cosplayer, a life coach, and an advocate for the LGBTQ community. As a gender fluid, demisexual individual, Eric, Ailey, uses their unique experiences and struggles to help others in the LGBTQ community to overcome discrimination, confront their inner demons, and achieve their dreams. If you're looking for inspiring stories from people who live authentically and fearlessly, this episode is for you. So grab a seat and get ready to explore a world where creativity meets courage. And hey, if you're loving these stories, don't forget to subscribe to the Bear Experiment on our YouTube channel. Let's keep growing this incredible community where we're keeping it real and diving real deep. Now let's get into it. And thanks for watching, guys. Okay, Eric. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. Welcome to the Bear Experiment podcast. So I find your story incredibly fascinating, and I want to start with what it is that do you do this for your cosplaying, right? Like I want to
Mhm.
better understand that. Is this something that you do as a hobby? Is this something that you do artistically? Is this something that you do for your career? All of the above?
Oh, well, that's a great question, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. All of the above, honestly. Cosplaying is just a great creative outlet. It's a good way to keep the passion and creativity going. It's a good way to meet cool people, and
Yeah.
it flows into the career in different aspects because there are different opportunities with charities and stuff that I participate in, and just a good way to meet cool people and give back.
So what exactly is cosplaying? Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So it's in the name. It's kind of a clever play on words there. So costume playing, costume cosplaying. So you're basically embodying a character in some way, shape, or form of putting on a costume. I like to perform as the character as best as I can, and you just go around and try to embody the character as best as possible in the spirit of it, what they represent. A lot of people they just like to put on the costume and they just get cool photos. I like to go fall all out, you know. So my main character is Super Mario. Hara
Ah.
doki doki. Let's go woohoo! And so I go around and I'm, jumping and I'm going woohooing and I got a bunch of Mario jokes that I tell. And I just try to have as much fun with it as possible, you
So
know.
you're basically an actor playing Super Mario Brothers from the Nintendo games, and you get all into the spirit of who he was and role playing that. I love it. So I noticed in your profile that you do many other fun characters. Can you share a little bit of those? I know that you sent me a lot of pictures, so I want to be able to identify which one is it because you sent me a lot of pictures and
There's
they're all fantastic, by the way. So why don't you walk me through some of the pictures that you sent me and who the characters are and what they represent?
Sure, absolutely, no problem. I did send a lot of pictures because I didn't know which ones we were going to talk about, so I figured I better be
So
prepared as best as possible.
how many characters do you cosplay?
So currently I have like maybe 10 or so that are really hardcore. If
Oh
I,
wow.
I just focus a lot of time on, I have, let me see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. And then there's a few, I have several other ones that are in the works as well. And then there are also variations of them that I do as well on top of it. So like I do Super Mario, like I
So
said, a
your
whole lot. So
Super Mario is like that's your main guy, right? That's the main one that you perform.
yeah.
That's your
So Mario,
that's your alter ego.
I mean, I like to think so. It's really fun that I can just, pull the voice out of anywhere and just, have a good time, bring a smile to people's faces. And, I do a lot of Mario jokes and stuff. So it makes it pretty fun to do. It's my favorite character of all time. So, but, like, so for Super Mario, he has a bunch of different power-ups and he has different abilities and stuff. So
I
I
remember.
do, yeah. So I do a lot of, his different variations and stuff like that. But other than Super Mario, we have his brother Luigi. Luigi, okie dokie, Yahoo! And I have a really fun one with him that I do that's a good way of LGBT representation at the same time, where I do Princess Luigi, where in one of the games, they trick the bad guy into giving up the princess by fooling them into thinking that Luigi is the princess. So I go around in the dress. I got a big old fan and everything like that. And I'd go as Luigi. I'm a princess. Okie dokie. I save it myself. Yahoo! It's all about having some fun, bringing some smiles to people's faces. That one's one of the more fun ones that I do that makes people laugh. Another really fun one that I do is I'm sure you're familiar with the band Queen,
Who isn't, right?
right? So they have the legendary front runner and main vocalist of Queen, which is, of course, Freddie Mercury himself.
Love him.
Uh, and then there's a anime that's really popular that people grew up with called Sailor Moon, and they have a character in there called Sailor Mercury. So I have a combination of the two of them where it's Sailor Freddie Mercury,
Oh my God, I love it.
and that's the blue one that I sent you with the. So I have I'm posing and I got the he's wearing the outfit and I got the rose in the mouth and his aviator shades, and that's a really fun one to do as well.
So it's Sailor Freddie Mercury.
Sailor Freddie Mercury.
I love it. I
Yes.
love it. Okay, I'll definitely be adding some of these pictures in the background just so that can people get viewers can get a visual of you in costume because you look amazing in that.
I
Um,
appreciate you.
any other ones that you would like to share?
Sure, sure, sure. Really quick ones. So those are the probably the more fun ones. I do Princess Peach as well, since I've embraced my gender fluidity and femininity. Uh, that's a character I've always wanted to do for years and years, and I felt comfortable doing it finally. We have that. There's also Astolfo, which is from an anime. He is a pink-haired, really feminine guy, and he looks like a girl. He looks and dresses like a girl, and so that really helped me with finding out who I am, with what I like to do, and how I want to express myself. I have Sans from the video game Undertale as the skeleton guy. I'm really proud of that costume. I put a lot of work into that, and
So you create
uh,
all your own costumes?
to some extent, there's uh, I'm not right now. I'm in the process of learning how to create things as they are. So a lot of my costumes are just put together. So like Mario is overalls that I bought and then a red shirt, but then I created the mustache that
Yeah,
comes off and it sticks to my face, you
right.
know. Sans Undertale, I was able to because his eyes change based on the game. And so I have it so that I have these LED glasses that I put on underneath,
Mm-hmm.
and with the push of a button on my phone, I can change the expression and stuff like that. So that's really fun to do. There's a character called Honoka from Love Live. It's a idol anime about singing and dancing and stuff like that. She's
I
this
saw that one. I
orange-haired
saw
one.
that one on your social media. That one stood out to me. I liked it.
Oh, I'm touched that she liked that one. She was really fun to do. I was part of a dance group and an idol dance cosplay idol group for a while there until that broke off. And being able to perform as her and dance on stage and everything was kind of a dream come true. That was so much fun to do. And then I have another version, another Love Live character. That's the name of the anime, where she's another
Lo lo
orange-haired one.
what's it called?
It's called Love Live.
Okay.
And that's based the big competition that they participate in. And then the last one I'll mention here that I sent you, I believe, is so I did a male version of a My Little Pony character
Oh,
who's
My Little
called
Pony. You had to put that one in there.
yeah. Well, it's I think that one's pretty fun and funny too. So the character is normally Rainbow Dash, so I changed it to Rainbro Dash,
Oh, I love it.
and that's the blue one with all the different colors that you'll see in there. And I did that one for years because people recognized me for it. So I had a really good time doing it, and I went off and I was very outgoing and charismatic. I was like, "Yes, I'm Rodash. How you doing? It's a pleasure for you to meet me. Yes, you're welcome." So I was very kind of obnoxious like that, but at the same time, I would always lift people up at this, based on the pedestal I was given at that time. So people were like, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to be just like you. Absolutely can do this. I believe in you. You got this." And hearing people's stories and able to support them and lift them up. That's how I kind of fell into the
Right,
speaking training coaching role.
because you are also a life coach for the LGBTQ community as well. But before we get
Mhm.
into that, you also, so I want to, okay, so just to finish up, so how long have you been doing the cosplaying?
So that's a good question. That's kind of like a semantical type of question. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to do it, but I grew up in upstate New York in this small little bubble. There's not really opportunities for this type of thing. There's no conventions up there. So I was doing it for Halloween every year. I was doing Mario for Halloween. And it was really around 2011 when I moved to Florida and MegaCon came about that I said, oh, here's an opportunity to actually cosplay.
That's
And so,
exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I visualize with everything that we're speaking about. Correct.
right, so about 13 years roughly at this point.
That's a long time. Okay, so let's get into um, your identification, just so that we can better understand that as well. So,
Sure.
uh, you identify as demisexual and gender fluid. Okay,
Yes,
so can you educate me a little better to understand what that means for the LGBTQ community?
sure. We'll start off with gender fluid first. So this is more along the lines of gender identity and gender expression. And gender fluid is where you identify as both genders in terms of expression, right? I remember being a little kid and uh, I went to like my mother's house or my mother's friend's house one time, and she said something like, "Go upstairs and play with the girls upstairs." And they had like this life-sized Barbie that they were selling at the time. And the big thing about that was that you could wear her outfit. You could take it off the doll, the mannequin, and put it on yourself. And even since I was a little kid, I was very little. I was like, oh, I always wanted to wear cute and pretty things. So I have my female side and I have my male side, which is very different from just a normal trans person, where they feel that they are born completely in the wrong body. So a trans man feels like that they aren't born a woman; they're meant to be a man, so they change their appearance to look like as a man to be themselves, and vice versa for trans women, right? A lot of people think that there's either one or the other. There's only male, there's only female, there's only trans man, there's only trans women, but I'm somewhere in between. So based on how I feel for the day, a lot of my expression changes. So, for example, I do a lot of feminine things during the day. So, like I have eyeliner that I'm wearing now. I usually have my
I
nails
saw
done.
your tutorial on how you do your eyeliner as well. I was taking some pointers on there as well.
I appreciate you. It's the eyeliner was so hard to learn. That took me like 20 minutes to do back in the day. Now I do it in like 8 seconds. So
I still have a hard time with eyeliner. Are you kidding me?
it's a skill, and I like to break things down as much as possible. So because the better I can understand something, the easier it is for me to explain it for other people. So I have friends of mine, I both in the LGBT community and just normal women who are like, I don't know how you're doing eyeliner. Can you make a tutorial? I'm like, sure, why not? It
Right.
take me a couple of minutes to teach you, so no worries. So I do that. I always wear these little heart pink earrings at all times, unless I'm cosplaying a character or something of the sort. I have this little bow that I got, as opposed to just wearing a tie. Simple little things that keep me feeling feminine, even when I'm not overly expressing feminine. Because there are times where I just have this type of stuff, or I fully dress up based on the situation and the like. So.
So you identify as both male and female, depending, but you identify more as a female, is what I'm understanding, right?
It's more on the feminine side, absolutely. So whereas trans folk, it's either one or the other.
Right.
I would feel remiss and I would have what they refer to as dysphoria if I were to just wake up as a woman tomorrow I would have just as much dysphoria, but on different aspects, right? So I can't completely leave my male side, but I also need to express my feminine side at the same time. So
And have you always felt this way since you were a young boy?
it's hard to put into thought, like, because when I was growing up, the situation that I lived in, I felt like I had to repress any femininity, that it was
Sure.
wrong, that there was this, that, or the other thing. And so I've always had it ever since I was a little kid. It's just I didn't get to experience and start expressing it until much later on in my life when I felt like I had that freedom and opportunity to share that part of myself.
Okay. So then what's the difference between gender fluid and demisexual?
All right, so gender fluid is a gender identity,
Right.
right? And a gender expression. So when we go into sexuality, that's a whole other topic there. There are four different topics that I use to help people describe themselves or who they are to help them find their identity. One of which is gender identity. The other one is sexual identity, is the other two main ones. And then we can go further from there. So, comes down to what your attraction is, right? So whether if you're heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, et cetera, and so forth, I fall under the category of asexual, where I don't have any sexual attraction to anybody
Okay.
whatsoever. I have romantic attraction, and I am romantically attracted to feminine people, but there's no sexual attraction at all whatsoever. I just don't have it. It's just not part of me. And then demisexual is further under the umbrella of asexual, where demisexual is where you can open up sexually when you have a strong bond with someone. And that's where I feel like I'm at, although I haven't really been able to completely test the waters because I haven't gotten that far with anybody at this point.
So it's more of in order for you to fall into that sexual compatibility with somebody at that point, it has to be an emotional connection before you can fall into the sexual aspect of it. Am I understanding
Exactly.
correctly?
Yeah. I
I
have
think
to feel like I have a bond first.
uh, uh, a lot of females would identify with that, right? With that feeling of
Hmm.
that emotional connection before you can become sexual with somebody, and men are more on the complete sexual side, right? Right from the beginning, they just want to have sex with you.
Hmm.
Um,
I can agree with that
yeah.
from my experience.
Okay, so then how have you experienced a lot of discrimination because of your identity and how you've chosen to express yourself and be yourself? Have you experienced a lot of discrimination?
So, like I said, growing up, I had a environment where I had a few family members that were like overly macho and a bit toxic masculinity going on there. And
Mm-hmm.
just to be clear, a lot of people seem to get masculinity mixed up with toxic masculinity. Like masculinity is just, hey, I want to go hang out with the dudes and drink beers and go fishing and go hunting. There's nothing wrong with any of that. Toxic masculinity is when you are actively harming other people for your views and stuff. So treating people as less than, the people that they are, treating them as less than equals. So they
Bullying,
were
basically bullying, right?
bullying, and that's an really easy way to put it, honestly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So they were overly macho and they had a lot of toxic masculinity going on. I grew up in quite the hornet's nest. I'm realizing as I grew up. And thankfully, my mother and other parts of my family were very open. So I wasn't, I didn't stay stuck in this rut growing up. I grew up and I had some accountability, realized I had to unlearn a lot of things, started to express myself. So for as far as discrimination, I don't really. You have to be smart about where you put yourself, where you apply yourself,
Exactly.
in order to protect yourself. So, other than that, growing up, I've been turned down on job interviews a few times for. I was doing real estate X many years ago. At this point, it was like 5 or 6 years ago. I was trying to do some real estate. A few places turned me down specifically because of my gender fluidity.
So
Um,
let me ask you, so when you were going
mhm.
and you were applying for those positions, um, were you dressing with your mixed feminine and masculine look that you have? Is that how you were going, or were you just going in as a complete female or a complete male at that point?
So whenever I'm trying to deal with the public and social situations, I usually dress like this for the most part, pretty professional. I have my suit. Sometimes I'll swap out the tie, the bow tie for a tie. But the only thing that was really feminine on me at the time was my nails, which I have to have them done professionally manicured because otherwise, I have wolf biter syndrome, which is where you bite your fingers and your nails and stuff like that, and they look really gross and nasty. So I get them done professionally to prevent that from happening. But I also feel like if I'm paying like X amount of money for a service, I should have the colors I should want on my nails.
Yeah.
So I usually have like sparkly pink nails, and uh, that's as far as I went in terms of expressing my femininity at that point in time, because that's not something I can easily just hide going into an interview.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's very visible. Absolutely. What are you going to go in with gloves at that point? Yeah, but I can
Yeah.
see how they can look they can look negatively upon that, like how is that going to reflect on a client that could be very judgmental. Even though I do think, especially in certain areas, like I come from Miami, right? And Miami is
Mhm.
very LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
happy Pride Month, and everybody there is very accepting. So it's certainly in different areas, it's more accepted, right? So you do see you, right, more
Yeah.
in the communities everywhere in Miami, and there's still a lot of bullying. Like I've had it, like I was sharing with you personally before, in my own family. Like I've seen it. There's been uh I've personally seen it firsthand where,
Right.
it's also much younger children, which I think that kids are just brutal. Um, but
Yes.
it was just like the constant attacking and attacking and attacking, and that really affects your mental health. So I want to kind of dive into that part of it with you. How has I would imagine there's a sense of confusion, right? Until you get old enough where you start understanding it and then accepting it and then just being yourself. So, what type of mental health, um, how did this affect your mental health? Did you struggle with any type of depression, anxiety? Like, walk us through that. Like, how were you feeling as you were just coming to terms with your identity?
Sure. That's a good question. So it was very difficult growing up because I had to. So the thing about it is that it's not something that's learned. It's not something that you're taught. It's not a disease. It's not any of this stuff. It's just a part of who you are, you know? So ever since I was a kid, as far back as I can remember, really, I've wanted to be more feminine, express myself, wear pretty things. But as I've stated before, but the thing is that if you don't feel comfortable that you can do that, what else are you going to do, And unfortunately, in my situation, I felt like I had to suppress that side of me for years and years and years and years and years until my late 20s there. And it was only at that point in time that we had gotten out of that toxic environment, like for good, that I realized, well, I can start looking at this. I can start examining the situation more. And I've realized, you know, at that point in time when I was really examining everything, doing some self-reflection, um, looking out over the years, that it's been bottling up inside of me for all of this time with no outlet. There's nowhere to go. And it ended up having a situation where I started to resent the society that I was in for not being able to allow me to express myself, right? So there was a lot of deep-seated resentment and frustrated feelings that as I started to express that they started to go away, and now I feel more euphoria on the topic. But it's definitely one of those situations where you have to be careful expressing yourself in the environments you're in because it might not be safe for everybody to do
Right,
it.
right. That's
You
that's
know,
key. That's key. Absolutely.
I've talked to a lot of
Yeah,
family.
you've seen so many gay hate crimes, where they murder you, right? Uh, I worked with in a TV station. I mean, he was flamboyantly gay, and
Mhm.
he would come in all the time with black eyes because they would just grab him in the street and just beat him up. And he's in Miami, and he works for a TV station, so. And that was not that long ago. I'm going to tell you, this was probably like what, 10, 12 years ago. And
Oh, jeez.
yeah, every now and again, he was just, coming in with black eyes. They were just messing with him all the time. So I can certainly understand that. So, how did you, once you understood that, how did you cope with it then? Did you did you seek therapy at that point to help you better understand your I what did you join a community where they were able to help you better understand because they had already experienced it also, like what you're doing right now as a life coach, which we'll get into that, how you're helping
Sure.
others.
Yeah, so it's good that you bring up therapy because I personally think that every person on this planet needs therapy.
I agree.
We all have a lot of unpacked trauma, and if you're not aware of it, if you're not used to having hardcore accountability, it can really skew the way you look and the way you treat people in your life without you even knowing it, right? So because I'm really big on having a lot of inner strength over power. Power is something that can be taken away. Talking like social power, political power. You can any type of power that can be taken away from you falls into the power category. I've always liked to live by inner strength, whereas you build yourself up to the point where you can do the things you want and you need to do because all you need is that cheerleader in the back of your head cheering you on to do what
Yeah.
you need to do, right? So expressing my femininity and coming to terms with it was very, very, very difficult. I had been suppressing it for over 20 years. Uh, I grew up in a situation where things weren't great. Just to give a quick backstory, I grew up in upstate New York, uh, and called Watertown, New York. It's like a half hour away from the border, hour north of Syracuse. And I grew up based on that type bubble. I grew up every type of phobic, every type of it just that you can think of. I was the biggest bigot that you could think of at the time. And it took a lot of pulling myself out of that bubble, meeting lots of people and learning their cultures and learning how people are that that was not healthy in any capacity because I used to hate every type of people who weren't and didn't look like me. And upon getting out and meeting people, seeing the world, you realize just how small-minded all of that is.
So
It all
you,
comes from
it's an interesting, I want to dive into that a little bit. Were
Mhm.
you getting to a point where you were getting resentful and angry and bitter? Were you at that point at one stage in your life right before you just came to terms where you accepted yourself?
I was like that for a very long time in general, as a teenager growing up. Um, I was, I mean, I was antisocial. I was introverted, hardcore. There's nothing wrong with being introverted. Uh, but I was pessimistic. I was just not healthy in any way, shape, or form, emotionally and psychologically. I was building my intelligence at the time. I like to learn things, but I didn't really have this inner strength that I talk about at that point in time. And once I finally moved out of upstate New York to Florida for the first time back around 2010,
So how old were
uh,
you when you got to Florida?
um, 22, 23
Hmm.
ish. And I was meeting all these people, and I slowly realized at that point in time that all of this hatred and whatever that I had towards every other person was just unfounded. There was no logic founded in it. It's very easy for the media to say these people you should be demonizing. These people aren't people. These people are ruining whatever the X, Y, and Z. And then you go out and you meet the people and you just realize, well, that's just not true. That's completely wrong. And since then, I've come to realize that, and I learned it pretty quickly at that point in time. I was like, that I actually love people. Variety is the spice of life. If we were all exactly the same, everything would get very boring real quick.
Right.
Just think about your favorite foods, right?
Yeah.
If we would all just eat the same food every single day of your life, that gets very, very, very boring. So because we have all these variety of people, we have various food dishes, various fashions, various pieces of art. Everybody contributes to the world in a great way. So tying back to your actual initial question, I had a lot of internal misogyny when I was initially growing up. And because society seems to teach men that and males and boys that being feminine makes you appear weak. You If you appear feminine in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get stepped on, you're going to get treated less than equal, and it's just not a good thing for you to do. So I had to come to terms with, well, there's nothing wrong with femininity at all in any capacity. There's nothing wrong with women. There's nothing wrong with girls. There's nothing wrong with uh, being more feminine in general. It's all based on logical fallacies. If you actually look at the logic behind the reasons that they're hating these people and putting them down and seeing them as less than people, there's no substance to it. So coming to terms with my femininity was a really tough journey because of how heavily this toxic masculinity approach was ingrained in me at the time. You
Well,
have to
and
unlearn it.
it's also what we're taught, right? Societal measures at that point. Like, from the moment that we're born, you're supposed to like this type of person, right? You're supposed to, we can even get into ethnicities, right? Like, no, you can't be with a black person, you can't be with a Hispanic person. There's so much judgment out there, and bullying, right, as a result of it, and hate and hatred, right? So I get where you're going with this. So dealing with all of your challenges and your acceptance, you went through, I would imagine, a very spiritual journey as well, finding
Right.
acceptance within yourself. I mean, I think that that's one of the only ways where you can just say, this is who I am, this is how I identify, and I have to love myself, and and whoever doesn't love me, that's okay. You need to be you
Yeah.
need to be comfortable with people not accepting you and not loving you, because you love yourself and you're okay in your own skin. So I'm happy that you are in this place right now where you're finding, self-love, and you got out of that, all those mental challenges, which I've experienced very close hand, how, degrading it can be to a family and to a person. So with all this, I love those stories where with all of these challenges, now you're helping others, right? And you've become a life coach, mainly for the LGBTQ community, or is it overall? Like, walk me through that. How did you start this? Like, how did you decide that you were going to start helping others, where you felt that you were ready to do that?
Sure. So one of the secrets to happiness is to help others, right? And
Absolutely.
so I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to make the world a better place. Always wanted to leave the world a better place than how I initially came into it, how I found it.
Me too.
Um, but as a life coach, you it's hang on a second. I got tangled up in my thoughts there.
We were
Uh,
talking about as a life coach and how you got started in this, how you found the courage and the acceptance to help others. Like, how did you get into that? How did you fall into life coaching?
right. So I fell into a situation when I was really big in Florida at the time, or at least in some of the convention. I had a name. I don't want to over top hype it or anything, but
But
I
hype
had a
it.
name.
Absolutely,
Okay.
talk.
So I started off as that Rainbow Dash character, like back in
Uh-huh.
2011 to 2013, and I would go around. I just went to the first convention I did it. I was really scared and confused, and I was just like, well, I was I don't know if people are going to treat me. I'm sitting here dressed as a My Little Pony with rainbow colors. How are they going to treat me?
Right.
So I just went into the character's personality hardcore, which is very egocentric and very um obnoxious, and I'm like, yes, how are you doing? It's a pleasure for you to meet me. I just went hardcore into the role because you're putting on a role, you're putting on a face mask. People, if even if people don't like who you are, if they're insulting the character, they're not insulting you,
I
right?
get it.
But the exact opposite happened where people loved it. They ate it up. I went on stage for a few different things. They had a few different events going on, like performance things. I just like I don't even know what I'm doing. Let's just do it. I don't care. I whip things out of nowhere, and that built this weird persona that whole convention. So when I went to the next convention, I did the character. People were recognizing me, and be like, "Well, this is cool," whatever.
A
And then it
local
just kept
celebrity.
snowballing. It's it was really fun. I would go into a convention and people would be like, "Hey, Rodash." I'm like, "Hey, what's up? What's going on?" And then we would talk for like 2 hours. I'd get to know people. I'd build them up. I'd tell them whatever I could to help them. And then they'd leave, and then I'd start to head in another direction. I'd be like, "Hey, Brodash." I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then it was just wash, rinse, and repeat. So because of this, I built up this personality. Conventions were inviting me to come as a local guest, right? and I would help them with running a few events that are happening and taking place. I'd run my own, and they just really liked how much my enthusiasm, my energy, and how I was hyping people up and making this really positive thing. I was an asset to them, and I had a great time, and everybody else had a good time around me. So it was just a win-win-win. I saw, you know. So one of my friends was running her own convention, and she invited me as a guest, and she invited me to run a couple events, and then I find out that one of the events is the history of Brodash. You know, learn about them, and I'm like, I don't know what to talk about for this. Uh, well, I guess I could kind of talk about what little bit of a journey I've had so far. And I started to tell my story of how I went from being introverted and pessimistic and hating people and being socially awkward to being who I am today. It was a really hard and difficult creative process and journey to becoming, extroverted, a people person, and being optimistic, and I shared my journey with that. And when I was done, people were giving me rounds of applause. They're coming up and hugging me, and they
I
said,
love it.
"Thank you so much. This really helps." And it's at that point in time you realize, huh, maybe I found a life calling right
You
here, you
get you
know?
eh, you get that courage, right? Where you're just, but you know
Hmm.
what I think it is too, Eric? It's because you're finally in that kind of like authentic self where you're accepting who you
Yes.
are. So you're genuinely happy, and that energy is being portrayed to others, and that's why you're being accepted, and that's why people are clapping and they want to hear more about you, right? You're not fake. You're not being fake about who you are, and that's what we're lacking in society today. There's a lot of fakeness out there, you know. How can I be like, what's that saying? Being like the Joneses, No, be yourself, be
Hmm.
authentic. People are the ones that are meant to love you are going to love you. Bottom
That's
line,
the
that's just
truth.
where we're at. So then so okay, so you find this calling where people are, they want to hear more about your story, you're encouraging them, you're making them happy. How do you get your first client, I guess we'll call it, right? Like, how do you get that first person that comes up to you and says, "Hey, Eric, I need help. How can this and this and this is
Hmm.
happening to me." Like, how does that person approach you, and how do you help them?
That's a good question. So you got to build up your confidence. You got to build up all this stuff. You got to have that self-love. You got to exude confidence as the person who can help somebody, you know. And so before I even realized it, I was life coaching people for years doing that. And then I
Right.
was trying to,
You don't
I
even
got,
realize it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes second nature before you realize. And you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize I was learning these skills. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. So I was building up my credibility as a speaker, right? And I got contacted by whoever runs the John Maxwell Twitter. And if you're unfamiliar with John Maxwell, he's one of the world's leading speaker trainer coaches for leadership, communication, and accountability.
Okay.
Since then, I embody all those, and now I've grown into personal growth and self development. So that's one of the main things with John Maxwell is you've got to have accountability. Accountability is step one. If you don't have accountability, you cannot grow, and that's just the very unfortunate fact for a lot of people because you have to be able to look inside yourself, ask yourself the very deep questions, and even if you don't like the answers, you have to accept them for what they are.
That's right.
Because if you can't accept them, you can't move on from them. You
That's
can't
right.
grow from them. So uh, people have been they come up to me at conventions and stuff like that. I started life coaching online just to build up my experience with it. Uh, Come to find out, I'm better at it than I initially thought going into it because I had all this experience before. And what I ended up happening is I ended up helping a lot of LGBT folks. You know, people who were in the closet, they were, they're gay or they're trans, or they have something going on that falls them under the LGBT umbrella, and then never really had anybody to talk to about it. A lot of people are. I talk to a lot of husbands who are too scared to share their femininity with their wives and their significant others because they've been this way for years and years and years. And, I would just tell them straight up, a lot of it is just communication and trust. You have to be able to have that two-way street of telling them what's going on. And I would, coach them from there. How do you express yourself, how you talk to them, how you bring up the topic. So I was coaching online for years for free, just for free,
So,
because
so let me just
Mhm.
interject here because I find that interesting. So,
Sure.
with those males that were coming to you saying that they, had a feminine side to them, but
Mhm.
they love their wives and they wanted to stay with their wives. So you were coaching them on how to speak, how to explain it to the wife, right? So basically, so the wife could understand and they wouldn't get a divorce. Did you find in your experience that your coaching helped them stay married, or did did it not work, right? Did the wife just say, like, I'm not into this, I can't, you're not who I married?
Right. So a lot of that comes down to the initial foundation of that trust and communication. Because a lot of people grew up like I did, but they didn't ever fix the situation. They didn't ever grow from it, right? They
Mm-hmm.
weren't ever able to have that ability to express themselves. They just kept it repressed, 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 repressed. And then you're in a marriage of like 10 years and you feel like you're going to explode because it's slowly been building up all this pressure all this time. And what do you
Mm-hmm.
do at that point in time, right? You have a significant other that's never heard of this side before. It's coming out of nowhere, uh, and a lot of them feel like that they've been lied to, that they haven't, that the other person hasn't been their authentic self,
Correct.
um, and that the whole marriage has been,
That's how
to
I
some
would
extent,
feel.
a lie,
Yeah, that's how I
right?
would
A little
feel.
bit of betrayed because you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have that trust in that marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and this whole time you find out that they've been keeping this massive secret that's important to them,
Yeah.
that's extremely harmful, hurtful. If I was in a marriage with somebody for 10 years or X many years, X amount of time, if I was with somebody all this time and our whole marriage is built on trust,
Right.
I would feel harmed. I would feel hurt that they would didn't feel like that they could share this with me,
Right, right. I
right?
mean, this is a
So
right. This is huge. Like you need to be upfront with me about this. But then why don't they do it? Because I think that the majority of women, heterosexual women, would be like, no, I can't be with you this way, right? Because we're supposed to be with masculine men. That is what
there is a big part of it too,
that is what society tells us. That is the correct thing to do, right? The
right?
accepted thing to do. Um, well, that's interesting.
So to
So,
finish off that thought, then though, for those women that are a lot of them, what's actually breaking their marriages isn't is that lack of trust, is what I found,
hmm
because that lack of trust and communication, they a lot of them end up actually being accepting, but they need time to heal, or sometimes the marriage breaks off specifically because of that lack of trust. And so some of those marriages are heading that way anyway because this person's going to explode.
right,
So ultimately what it came down to is, how long have they been together? How long have they been talking to, keeping this repressed and not communicating? And can that other person forgive them for that main part right there? But there have some that have been,
that
more
successful.
closed-minded.
But have you had successes as well, where they've stayed together and they've accepted each other and had happy marriages?
Yes, absolutely. You don't, like I said, you don't want to go into a long-lasting trust relationship like that and keep stuff hidden from your
Mm,
significant other. But a lot of them were, they felt hurt at first, but upon talking about it, they're glad they eventually got around to it. And they, a lot of them sometimes they go to therapy, couples counseling to work on the issues themselves. Because life coaching just helps people reach their goals and overcome their demons and overcome their obstacles.
right. Yeah, it's
It's
like
not a
it's
replacement for therapy.
but I think it is almost like a form of therapy, don't you think?
It's a form. I think it can help in a lot of therapeutic topics,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a professional in terms of
Of
therapy,
course, of course.
right?
But I will tell you that you also have the personal life experience where you've had all those, hidden feelings and emotions and you've dealt with the pain and the discrimination. And I think that that makes you more valuable sometimes than a therapist that learns out of a textbook of what they're
Oh,
supposed to
sure.
tell us, because you've dealt with that pain, that those mental challenges, those discriminating thoughts inside of you where you didn't know who you were and how to identify with yourself. So I would listen to you before I even listen to a therapist just because you've been in the fire, and so
That's true.
how have your personal life experiences then? Like how do you help others with everything that you've been through? Like what's your strategy then with your life coaching and therapeutic sessions? I mean, let's call it what it is.
Okay. So a lot of the people that come to me there have questions of identity. These are the main questions. Who am I? What do I like? How do I know if I'm trans? How do I know if I'm this way or that way? The other thing. And you have to really quickly, you learn quickly that you have to unbrainwash people that, because as a society, we're taught that there's two boxes and you have to fit in one or the other.
Right.
You're a man, you're a woman.
Right.
And now it's extended to, the trans community. So trans man or trans woman, there's only four boxes. You have to pick and choose. What if I'm standing in like two boxes? What if one foot's in this one and one foot is in this one? What if none of those boxes fit? You know, there's the boxes that society uses meant for them to organize you. But if they don't have something that fits you or where you're at, you shouldn't commit to any of those boxes. You shouldn't settle for one or the other. So and that was one of the big problems that I had growing up is figuring out where I stood. So do I
Right.
stand in the man box? Do I stand in the woman box? Do I stand in the trans woman box? Where do I stand? And one of the characters that I cosplay, Astolfo, actually opened my eyes to the possibility that, because I didn't even come to my attention that there can be feminine males, right? Whether you call it femme males, otoko noko, uh, gender fluid, that's a bit different, but or femboys or whatever you want to call it, that there are femme folks who are biologically male, right?
Right.
Uh, and just being able to express yourself, wear pretty things, look cute. The character is Astolfo. He looks and dresses like a girl. If you were to see this character, it's an animated character. You would say that that's a girl character, but he's a guy. He just likes the way that looks, and that's it. That's all he needs. I like the way this looks. I wear it.
I
Super
find
simple.
I find that a lot of people that are in theater and actors, they fall into these arts because
Hmm.
they've had some level of trauma growing up, right? And
Oh, sure.
discrimination. And this is certainly like a form of self-expression where it's kind of an exterior, right? Where it's not you. You feel like another person. And it's what you were saying earlier. It's like if they're judging me, they're not really judging me. They're judging the character that I'm
Character.
playing.
Yeah.
So, you get a free pass with that until you fall into where you're at today, where you've just, you're you, you're authentic, and it's a great place to be. Um, what is it that you would like people to better understand about gender fluidity and demisexuality? Is there something that you can say to the masses for them, for people like me, to be, I guess, more comfortable with it? There's a lot, like we were talking about the discrimination, there's a level of uncomfortability that we have with dealing with these issues. What can you share with us, being in this persona, so that we can better understand and identify with you guys as well?
Sure. For the gender fluid part, just understand that there's not a box for everybody. Some people need their own boxes. We don't just fit into men, women, male, trans woman. So just try to understand their situation a bit more. And as for asexuality and demisexual, I initially thought I was a broken person
Right.
because I've had relationships in the past, but they didn't go far because I always felt very uncomfortable about something. Like the whole being intimate thing just made me extremely, extremely uncomfortable. And I didn't know, what was going on. So I ended up breaking off those relationships early on because I couldn't explain it in a way. There's no way for me to articulate my feelings
Almost like a fear
without
of,
sounding like I was weird.
almost like a fear of attachment, right? Because you were not clear with what you probably even wanted at that point, right? Because you were also so
Mhm.
confused. I would imagine that that would play a big role in that as well. Let me ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't feel comfortable. It's very
Sure.
controversial. But I'd like to get some feedback if you're open to talking about it. What is your position um, with the LGBTQ community and trans bathrooms, right? And
Hmm.
trans people going into female bathrooms when they're men, when they're actual biological men, but they're dressing up as females. Do you think that ethically this is something that's correct? Do you think that because from a female perspective, a heterosexual female's perspective,
Hmm.
I find that very uncomfortable. Not with a woman, not with a man that is transsexual, that really wants to be a woman because ever since they were a little kid, they've identified, like I get it. I understand that part. I understand that there's that gender dysphophobia that happens, right? We're born into the wrong bodies. I get it. But what about if it's a sick person out there that's just looking to let me wear a dress and let me walk into the female's bathroom and you have a young little girl in there and they're just trying to take advantage of that young child? Like, what are your views on that? If you even want to share them.
Sure, I can speak up on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are sick people, regardless of gender. There are sick guys who peep on little boys in the bathroom. There are sick women who peep on little girls in the bathroom. There are just sick people out there. For those sick people, I just say you hold them accountable according to their actions, right? We don't want to blame an entire community of people for the actions of the very few weird sick ones. Being trans is a not a really a choice for it's not a choice, it's you're born this way and that's really it, every person can tell you a different journey. And being trans is not an easy thing. You're basically putting a target on your back by society with for discrimination, for being bullied, etc., and so forth. So nobody wakes up one day and says, "I'm going to be trans today," and that sounds like it'll be a fun thing to do. It's a really difficult and painful journey for a lot of people. Um, I've talked to a lot of people. I've seen so many people that they're finally starting to feel happiness for the first time in their lives. That's starting to express this way. That they're starting to express this way. But that being said, it's still coming with a really heavy toll and a heavy cost. Some people are kicked out by their families. They're uh,
Yeah.
tossed out on the street. They are, you know, dead to their family. They're
Mm-hmm.
what's
Their
the word for
parent,
that?
their parents disown them.
Disowned is the word I'm looking for here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something people do just willy-nilly, Those who choose to walk the path and express themselves upon realizing that they're trans are extremely brave because they're basically just pointing an extra target on yourself, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
you're a further minority, if you're, black or,
Right.
Jewish or
Let's
whatever, it's just
let's say
adding more
yeah,
to it.
let's take it to another level, right? Like it's just like the amount of discrimination that you're going to get and hate is just yeah, overwhelming, and that's why there's so much suicide as well, right? Within the
Yeah.
LGBTQ community because they get to a point that they just get so tired.
So then
Um
to wrap up your initial question there, am I okay with them going to the bathroom? I say, I as long as that particular individual isn't hurting anybody, let them do it, I have seen so many stories where people are like, I just want to go to the bathroom. Why and they're replying to all of this hate and
mhm.
rhetoric that people are putting out there like, I'm literally just trying to go to the bathroom. I'm You think I'm sitting here as some sort of predator, sitting like, ha ha ha, I can't wait to peek at people when I'm scared out of my mind that somebody's going to come up to me and give me crap. I literally just want to use the bathroom. To
And
finish off that,
and
yeah.
and as much as I don't agree with it, like I can see the side also where you are a male, dressed as a female, right? And you're going into a male bathroom, like the attack that you're going to get from these macho men in there also, it's like
Hmm.
you're putting your life at risk as well. So yeah, it's a delicate topic,
Hmm.
I thank you for sharing your view with me on that.
Sure.
Um I appreciate that very, very much. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry that I cut you off.
I was just going to wrap it up and just say that those who are the sick individuals,
Mm-hmm.
you hold them accountable every single time. You don't judge people based on how they express themselves, but by their actions, right? And how they choose to act.
Mm-hmm.
So you hold those ones that are accountable, responsible, and you give them whatever sentence that they need. And hopefully that'll further discourage people who think that they can just get away with sick stuff like that in the future, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's close out
Mhm.
the podcast. Thank you so much for sitting with me, Eric.
My pleasure to be here.
To close it off, if there's one thing that you can say to a young male or female that's, in a position where they're struggling with their sexuality, with their identity, they're dealing with discrimination, with bullying, with hate, where they're thinking about suicide and hurting themselves. Share some encouraging words to let them know that everything is going to be okay because it was okay with you. And there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to point out that you're not alone. There's so many others who are going through the same thing, who have been through the same thing. Humanity, one of humanity's strongest features is our community, our ability to work together, to support each other, to overcome our weaknesses, to be there for each other. Reach out to anybody that you feel could be a good ally for you, whether if it be a family member, a friend. If you're old enough to safely be on the internet and you're able to properly assess the dangers of the internet, search for other communities that are out there, trans communities, LGBT community in general is just as a blanket community is wonderful. Everybody's very understanding and very caring. Um, and uh, find some ways to express yourself that are safe for you,
Right, right.
right? It's not always easy to walk around wearing whatever you want, doing this or the other thing, but find some way to express yourself that's healthy in a safe environment. Um, if you're questioning yourself, you have to ask yourself the big problems. I do life coaching for free. I have services that you can pay for, where I follow up with you and I work with you one on one. But I give all of my answers for free because I was in that situation once myself growing up. I now know things that I would have killed to have known growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
I cannot consciously put a price gate on that. That's very unethical in my eyes. So you can ask me any question. I am always happy to answer. And for those who are looking for more one-on-one help, I have a service for that as well. But you have to ask yourself the big questions. Don't let any um, propaganda or otherwise methods, what is it? Any other discrimination in your mind keep you from looking at all the options. And you have to be completely honest and true to yourself. Hold yourself completely accountable because that's where the growth is going to come. And let me tell you something. The number one golden rule that I tell people is if you're not hurting yourself or others, there's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. I
And
agree.
that's the most important thing that I can tell you.
I'm going to be sharing in the comment section in the YouTube channel all of your social media links with your information. So if anybody's interested in contacting you directly for further information or one-on-one communication with you where you can help them, I'll definitely be putting that in the link. You come across as a super authentic and genuine person, Eric. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love that you were opening up to have this conversation with me. I think that it's an important topic. I think that more people need to talk about this. The world is becoming more spiritual, it's becoming more open, it's becoming more free. And I think that we need more love and less hate and less war, right? Because there's just too much hate in this world, and that ain't good for nobody, right?
That's the truth of it.
Yeah. So thank you again for speaking with me. To everybody that's watching, thank you so much for tuning into the Bear Experiment. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share. Share this with anybody that you feel that might need to hear this, even if it's one person that we're helping, then we're doing a good deed for the day, right? So, Eric, have a great rest of the weekend, and we will definitely be keeping in touch.
It was a pleasure, Monica. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, honey. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.